Lane Kiffin absolutely won SEC Media Days. It's over. Roll credits.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Rebel Nation. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today on the show, we dive into the buzz from SEC Media Days. Coach Lane Kiffin absolutely stole the show, bringing a ton of national expectations to the Ole Miss Rebels. And with SEC Media Days now behind Ole Miss, the spotlight is on the Rebels nationally. It's like a spotlight down on Ole Miss. Kiffin's confident demeanor and strategic insights have set the stage for what could be an incredible season. But with high expectations comes pressure, and how will the team handle it? Stay tuned as we break down Deion Smith as well, and what is going on with this high-level athlete, and what does it mean for Ole Miss, whether he or not he arrives at Ole Miss for fall camp. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to have a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They provide valuable insights on the SEC, Ole Miss, the whole 9 yards. You can check them out as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now let's get into today's show and talk about all things Ole Miss Rebels. And Lane Kiffin just absolutely won SEC Media Days. It was over. It was a situation to where somebody that has dealt with tragedy over the course of the last week with Lane Kiffin, he got there, they announced that, they handled that. So maybe that handled stuff, but I saw a coach that was very comfortable and confident with positions all over the field. There's not really a weak point that he appears to be trying to cover up, where you've heard Shane Beamer on the same day of SEC Media Days, to where he basically filibustered for 25 minutes to avoid the questions coming in because he knows there are holes on his roster. You didn't really have that with Lane Kiffin. He talked about the players that he brought to SEC Media Days in Jaxson Dart, Tre Harris, and Jared Ivey. He talked about the way that his team has used the transfer portal buildup. He talked about meeting Coach Saban and all of that, and talking about all of the expectations that are coming in on this team. But what you saw was a Lane Kiffin demeanor that was extremely comfortable to be in front of a crowd. He does not like giving press conferences. He does not like those settings. He was fairly comfortable up on stage and talking about that in a way that you haven't really seen in the past. And I think that is because of the talent of his roster. He realized that. He has a year 3 Jaxson Dart, who Jaxson Dart a year ago had a really good year, like 233, 358, 65%, 3,364 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That was a year 2 Jaxson Dart. And he talked about specifically in one of the groups that he was in this year about the growth of Jaxson Dart, not necessarily between year 1 and year 2, but between the beginning of year 2 and the bowl game. He talked about the quarterback in the bowl game, in the Peach Bowl against Penn State, making extremely high-level throws downfield to where ball placement was elite. And Jaxson Dart handled that as well. And we're going to talk in this next segment about the national media and their love for Ole Miss, because my goodness, the rat poison was in full effect at SEC Media Days in Dallas. But Lane Kiffin is basically answering questions from the media about how talented his roster is, how do you handle the culture of the roster, and what areas is he turning to for Ole Miss going into the season. That's kind of where Lane Kiffin's living right now. And that's really interesting stuff. I mean, we have not seen what a year 3 Lane Kiffin quarterback looks like. if Jaxson Dart makes the jump from year 1 to year 2, from year 2 to year 3, you're talking about a Jaden Daniels #1 draft pick type player. We talked about that. Lane Kiffin actually bragged about the leadership of Jaxson Dart, saying that if leadership was rated on college football 25, Jaxson Dart would get a 99. Lane Kiffin said that. We did our show yesterday about how this was basically the whole country's introduction to Jaxson Dart and somebody that's going to take over college football or be a star in college football, and how I think he might be the best leader in the history of Ole Miss football. You talk about somebody that has made clutch play after clutch play after clutch play, and that's the first rule of leadership in a college football player. Otherwise, you're just saying stuff. You need to make plays, and you need to make plays when they need to be made. Jaxson Dart has made those over and over and over again over essentially the last 13 games. Really, really good player. You have to have a whole bunch of stuff around you that people can look. It's like, okay, I want to follow that guy. You have to have a personality that attracts and not repels. And Jaxson Dart completely has that. If anybody saw his work at SEC Media Days, you can see where he sits. And you have to have the want to do it. From what I understand, and from what everybody says, he's one of the hardest workers on the team. He is recruiting his butt off, and he sets an expectations level that is beyond exactly even what the rat poison people like me are spitting out. Because of that, Lane Kiffin gets to go into this season with an eased mind to where he can be comfortable. He knows he's the winner of it because he has a group of people that handle the leadership of this team. Everybody's worried about the culture and the leadership of this Ole Miss team moving forward. And Lane Kiffin's even paying lip service to it. But I'm not worried about it because of the leadership of Jaxson Dart, Jared Ivey, Tre Harris, and those guys. These are the same group of people that set a standard that essentially during the Peach Bowl set it up for Quinshon Judkins to be run off. They are not going to tolerate you playing at a standard less than what they've set. Lane Kiffin has built that, has a group of players that have endorsed that and are basically living that, which means that, hey, there's certain things that he has to do. I mean, he has to put the ingredients together every single year. But there's a solid base in leadership in people that are currently on campus. He gets a winner for that. Everybody is worried about, hey, Ole Miss has signed 45 players over the last year. There's 45 new players in camp. Yeah, those 45 new players are going to fall into line. They are. If they don't, they're going to get spit out. And that's what we've seen over and over again with this team. Lane Kiffin is a winner with that. Lane Kiffin is a winner with the talent that he has in the roster. Lane Kiffin is the talk of college football in the national media, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. Lane Kiffin has an elite graduating class, a schedule that is manageable, where the toughest 3 games on the schedule is at LSU, against Georgia, and against Oklahoma. Only one of them's on the road. Lane Kiffin came out and won SEC Media Days. There's 3 days left. Stark still has to go. Brent Venables still has to go with Texas and Oklahoma, which is going to be an outright circus. Alabama and Kalen DeBoer still has to go. It doesn't matter. Lane Kiffin just went up and did what we all expected him to do. And an Ole Miss team that won the offseason, essentially, has done nothing to relinquish that crown moving into the actual season. Lane Kiffin won Media Days because he has a good team and he knows it. He's comfortable and he has pieces around him that makes the unpredictable parts predictable. And since a coach is based off of whatever's predictable, this is the secret thing, the secret sauce in coaching. They love predictable. They want predictable. They want to be able to count on the fact that if they do A, B is going to happen, which is going to lead to C. This Ole Miss football team right now is predictable. And that has Lane Kiffin kind of at ease with this Ole Miss Rebels team. You know, from underdogs to darlings, the Ole Miss Rebels are stealing the national spotlight. Find out why everybody is talking about us on this episode of Locked On Ole Miss right after this. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, all streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Your team every day. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and help Ole Miss football be elite. You can go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. So Lane Kiffin was the big winner of the SEC Media Days, and I don't know if anybody can even catch him at this point. I think he is going to be the ultimate winner. I think Ole Miss won the offseason. And the reason I think that is, I spent the better part of the last 6 months, since the Peach Bowl, talking about this football season and everything's going on with the knowledge that I could be going off on a ledge. I could be on an island. I could be by myself. I could see football and think this is what I'm seeing, as most people that do this do. You know, everything surroundings affects what's going on. And it is nice to have validation from the national media that I am on at least the right track and I'm not the only one that sees this. Whether you had a situation where every member on the SEC network panel, like Jordan Rogers, Roman Thomas, and Dusty Dvorak, Joe Tessitore, all of those guys talking about how Ole Miss is a lock for the college football playoff. I've said this over and over again over the last 6 months. I am an ultimate homer. I don't hide it. I do not run from that. So there's always a situation to whenever this happens that maybe hope is springing into it a little bit too much. That doesn't appear to be the case on this one. I did apparently see this correctly, or at least like everybody else. Jordan Rogers even went so far as saying that Jaxson Dart is his pick to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And everybody just was gushing on Ole Miss to the point where like Joe Tessitore was like, hey, you know, normally when you come here, you tell me something's wrong, Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin's like, yeah, I tell you something. Whenever I'm the only coach that will say there's a problem whenever there is one, not just coach speak over and over again. But this year he didn't. And Joe Tessitore pointed that out, that Lane Kiffin said, hey, we're pretty good in every position. We are all down to execution at this point. All of the ingredients are there for a major run. Joe Tessitore even talked about a national championship type run to Lane Kiffin. I mean, this is heady stuff. This is heady waters to the point where they're talking about locks for the college football playoff. And they're like, yeah, Ole Miss is a lock, but I think I'm a little bit worried about Alabama. That is what was going on at SEC Media Days. The national media is absolutely in love with Ole Miss, whether it be Greg McElroy, whether it be the other ESPN type host. If you even look at the Fox post that post online, they are in love with Ole Miss football. Because let's just be honest, okay? This is what the schedule looks like for Ole Miss this year. They open with Furman, and Lane Kiffin did make a joke that said this year the Furman is the most important game because he does have to make sure they go game by game. Everybody otherwise would circle that Georgia game, and traps would become even more traps than they already are. Ole Miss really has to take this game by game. The Lockdown Ole Miss prediction, I'm sitting at 11-1. I think that is chalk. Because at the time of kickoff, I think Ole Miss is going to be favored in every one of their W's, and the only game that they're going to be an underdog in are the Georgia Bulldogs. So that's a situation, Furman, MTSU, Wake, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, at South Carolina, at LSU, Oklahoma, at Arkansas, Georgia, at Florida, against Mississippi State. That is what is going on, and that is what is in front of Ole Miss at the moment. The national media sees that. They talk about the schedule being very favorable to Ole Miss and for Ole Miss in this run. Ole Miss and Missouri, they're kind of two peas in a pod at the moment. Ole Miss gets Georgia, Missouri gets Alabama. Both is going to have a very difficult game, but both have schedules that are very, very favorable for a playoff type run. And it's okay to say, hey, it's playoffs or bust for Ole Miss. Everybody else is talking playoffs. Everyone is talking playoffs. And they're like, well, what if you don't make it? Well, yeah, people fail. Sometimes things don't work out the way they're supposed to. But right now, you should expect Ole Miss to make the playoff. If they don't, we'll just talk about that and talk about things that are happening differently. But Ole Miss has the talent for it to happen. And the expectations need to be national title. If that's what you want, if that is what you legitimately want, that is what the expectation should be. If it's not, you're doing a disservice to Jaxson Dart and this incredible transfer portal class that he recruited. Jaxson Dart has a chance to move up with 37 or 3,800 yards to be the all-time leading passer in Ole Miss history. If Ole Miss wins 10 or 11 games and goes to a playoff, he's going to be the winningest quarterback in Ole Miss football history. His leadership and recruitment brought all of the players in. I think Ole Miss fans need to enjoy this. They desperately need to enjoy this because other players that have come in, and I'm looking forward to them, we're going to talk about in just a second, because Lane Kiffin did mention that Deion Smith might not be there for the start of camp. Now, he didn't say he wasn't going to be there, period. It was very clearly saying at the start of camp he might not be there, which that is going to raise an interesting conversation that we'll get into in a second. But if you look at players like Juice Wells, his importance with that has gone up. Juice Wells is one of the better run after catch receivers in all of the SEC. When you add that with Tre Harris as well, this Ole Miss team, they're in pretty good shape. You look at Jordan Watkins, they already had 4 receivers for 3 positions. So you have a position, you're going to be all right regardless. But it should be really interesting. And if Caden Prieskorn stays healthy over the course of the season, these are his stats: 10 catches, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion at the Peach Bowl. If you talk about these players and these weapons and all of this stuff, you can see why the national media absolutely loves Ole Miss. And if you look defensively, that's where a lot of this transfer portal work was put in. You look at the Walter Nolans, the Princely Amamuelans, the Chris Pupal, which, by the way, at SEC Media Days, everybody was asking about Pupal. Maybe that was just an Arkansas writer that saw an opportunity to get some quotes about him doing that, but everybody was asking about him. Everybody was asking about Juice Wells. Juice Wells was brought up by Tre Harris and Jaxson Dart over the course of his interview. It is a situation for Ole Miss to where there are weapons all over the place. One thing that they got that close, just they walked up to the ledge of another thing that I've talked about, of Lane Kiffin actually admitting it, talking about there is no replacement in the transfer portal for Quinshon Judkins. He basically all but said they had to find his yards, his touchdowns, and all of the stuff that he did in the aggregate, and which I've talked about that. But he walked right up to that and to going with the Jaxson Dart leadership conversation and all of that. Yesterday was a really good day for me over the last 6 months worth of shows. So I know I'm going to be unbearable, but yeah, that's what we're dealing with at the moment. But the national media loves Ole Miss. I would not be surprised for Ole Miss to be third or fourth in the SEC rankings when they're listed. I would not be surprised if they put Ole Miss second, if Ole Miss got that point, because this roster is beautiful. It is Kathy Ireland beautiful. And it's just going to be really, really impressive for Ole Miss football. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. Ole Miss fans, uncertainty looms as we approach fall camp. Will Deion Smith be joining the Rebels? We talk about that next. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows from SEC Media Days, and it's honestly kind of refreshing that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because even as the ultimate homer that I am, I do get nervous talking about positive over and over and over again. Give me something to feel anxious about, right? I mean, that's like the Ole Miss fan from 1985 coming out. Give me something to be anxious about going into a football season, and this might be it. I think Lane Kiffin talked to the small group of the media saying that Deion Smith might not make it for the opening of fall camp. That's all I have, that he might not make it for the opening of fall camp. Does that mean that he will not make it on the team? No, that does not mean that. Does that mean that he is going to make it on the team? No, it does not mean that as well. So what does that mean? I think in this situation, we need to at least act, as in we, as in Ole Miss, needs to at least act like he's not going to make it. And if he does, that's a bonus. That's something that by the end of the year, everything should be good to go. But Ole Miss at wide receiver has Juice Wells, Jordan Watkins, and Tre Harris lined up. Those are three top-level starters for the Ole Miss football team. Whenever you look at Caden Lee, when you look at Aiden Williams, when you look at other players that you can make a two deep, you can make this wide receiver unit be honestly quite good. And Jordan Rodgers talked yesterday in the fact that Ole Miss is planning on going 5 wide receivers a lot this season. You're going to see a healthy dose of it. And a lot of that has to do similarly to what Joe Burrow did at LSU in 2019. It's going to look real similar, because there's going to be a good chance that a lot of time Ole Miss is in 11 personnel, just like they normally are. So formationally, they go 5 wide, they come in and all of that, and it's because of the versatility of their wide receivers. Deion Smith will make that easier if he makes it to Oxford. But him not making to Oxford is not fatal. Deion Smith is a lottery ticket, a very good lottery ticket, and the wide receiver unit gets better with him in the room. But the wide receiver unit without him in the room does not drop down to a level that is honestly concerning or even worrying. It's a true lottery ticket. So we all hope that Deion Smith makes it to Ole Miss. I mean, he drove up to his signing in a freaking Lamborghini. Whenever that happens, there needs to at least be some confidence that you're going to be able to make it in. And he has announced that he has done what he needed to do to make it in. That happened, 3 weeks ago? And, Inside the Rebels and other sites that cover Ole Miss were talking about it. Yes, he's good to go. But there were still rumblings from everybody. It's like, well, he might not be good to go. Why isn't he here? And all of that. And people told me, literally, that Ole Miss just was waiting for him to get there in the fall because he looked like he was going to be a one semester and done. That's what was said to me. That turns out to not be entirely accurate as well. It seems to me, and I could be completely off base on this, and if I am, I apologize. But it seems to me that his first semester at LSU, was a 0.0 for the semester. If you look at Animal House, just a guess. And he has been trying to dig out of that hole ever since. He went to East Mississippi Community College, famously Last Chance U. This time it wasn't the last chance. It was the next to last chance, but he ended up not sticking around there and ended up at Holmes County Community College. So you deal with the fact that hours were missed, the clock started. East Mississippi, probably the same type stuff happened. Maybe some stuff was missed whenever he withdrew from school. And at Holmes County Community College, he obviously did what he had to do, and he's been working online-wise to get there. That is my guess of what is going on. Will he get there? It sounds like he's close. And if you asked me, I think he will get there, honestly. I think that by the second week of fall camp, Deion Smith is on the field running routes and doing what he has to do. But here's the problem. Here's the problem with that. Deion Smith, this isn't a plug and play. And sometimes this Lane Kiffin offense can get complicated with how you run routes against certain coverage and people doing things against you. It takes a little bit of time to get it right. This is the reason that I think the starting three right now, Tre Harris, Jordan Watkins, and Juice Wells, because they have some experience in kind of working in the system. Everybody's going to say, well, Juice Wells hasn't practiced at all yet either. Well, that's true, but Juice Wells has been in the system watching film, right? He's been probably out to California running routes, and Jaxson Dart's eyes have lit up talking about Juice Wells. Deion Smith hasn't done that. Even that little bit of catching on, he has not done. So I would not expect him, at least in the early part of the season. So this is the best case situation for Ole Miss, in my opinion, right now. Like I said, I think that Deion's going to end up making it on campus, but the best case is he spends the non-conference slate getting up to speed. And by the Kentucky or LSU game or the South Carolina game, that is when he kind of busts onto the scene. Makes it through. Hopefully he has the grades for the playoffs to where you can get that value. But I think that is what Ole Miss is dealing with going in. Like I said, I've heard nothing. This is just kind of what it sounds like with me being in that building before. I think he's going to be fine. I think this is probably a GPA whenever you transfer. There's stuff that can happen. We will see. He might make it for the start of fall camp. He might. Like I said, it was uncertain that he would. That doesn't mean he will. That doesn't mean he won't. That means that it's uncertain and it's not 100% right now one way or another. It should be quite interesting. But I like Deion Smith. And Ole Miss's wide receiver room with him in there is even a notch better than what it is right now. And remember this as well. Whenever Ole Miss gets all these rankings for the wide receiver room where they have the top wide receiver room in the country or third or second or something like that, that's kind of without factoring in Deion Smith. Remember that. Ole Miss is getting all these plaudits without him. Deion Smith is bonus. Deion Smith is adding to what could be an excellent wide receiver room. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast out there, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, check out Locked On's new venture, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover each and every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. For those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.